Good morning. Mary Pat McKee with Indy Boomer Magazine. I am here with Ann Poindexter from Campbell Kyle and Profit Law Firm. We're going to discuss some information with her this morning, but before we get started, I'd like to thank Wofford Theater, Jim Wofford, Hamilton County TV, Hamilton County Radio. This show is also, I don't know if you know this, Ann, that show is also on Hamilton County Radio Monday through Friday at 6:30 p.m. So if you want to catch and listen to the show, you can't see our beautiful faces, but
There you go.
you can hear us talking. So very good. Hope everybody caught the May issue, or excuse me, the May issue. I'm way ahead. I'm actually working on the May issue. Just put to bed the March issue with Larry Bird, which will be coming out on March 10th. You can also, right now, though, actually go to the website, to indyboomer.com, and download the digital version if you'd like. Let's get back to business here.
Okay.
Ann, you're with Campbell Kyle and Profit. We've had Ann on the show before, had a great time. This time we're going to discuss a different topic than we
We
did
are.
before. We're going to talk about trust. And we're not just talking about me trusting you. She's talking about trusts that need to be set up a lot of times for baby boomers' parents, possibly even themselves, right?
Right.
What can you tell us? What should people know about trust?
Well, the first thing that I want people to know about trusts is that there are just an infinite number of types of trusts.
Okay.
You know, I get a lot of people that come in, and when I use the word trust,
Mm-hmm.
or someone has told them that maybe they should consider a trust,
Mm-hmm.
they think of a 100-page document
That's what I would
and
think
a
of.
$10,000 cost, and
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to go there. That's
People
frightening
just don't
to
know.
them because they don't know.
Right.
But trusts run the gamut.
Okay.
You know, you can actually have trust language within a will.
Okay.
Trust language that may take 2 to 3 pages
Mhm.
within a will, to trusts that are 100 or more pages that are very complex.
Okay.
It depends on what you're trying to accomplish in that document.
Okay.
Whether it's something that is really not that complicated, it is pretty straightforward, sometimes even simple.
Give me an example, can you?
Okay.
Of what would be a simple trust?
Something that is really more of a straightforward or simple trust, and the most common example is planning for children. Okay?
Okay.
So I get younger couples that come in and they have minor children.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of us, although my child is over this age, but the majority of us don't think that our children, if we die prematurely,
Right.
should get their hands on any amount of money at the ripe old age of 18.
Right.
Indiana law says that children are adults for inheritance purposes at age 18.
Mm-hmm.
So if your will just says it goes to my children,
Then if they're 18, they're going to get it and they'll probably blow it or,
they are.
yeah.
And so the answer to that is to put some trust language in the will
Okay.
that says, instead of giving it to my children,
Mm-hmm.
give it to a trustee.
Who then gives it out?
Right.
Okay,
And here are
okay.
the instructions for the trustee.
Okay.
You decide that age
Mm-hmm.
beyond the ripe old age of 18.
Right.
And maybe that age is 25. Maybe that age is 30. Some people say it should be 50.
Well, yeah, that could be true. But you could also make that money for their school. I mean, higher education, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
you put the instructions in
Mhm.
there. For school, sometimes after school, if there's money left, you say hold it, but down payment on a house.
Okay.
Some people spread it out so that kids never get a big lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
But you put the instructions in there.
Okay.
And depending on the instructions, it doesn't have to be that complicated or that many pages.
Okay.
But it's all about, in one sense almost, continuing that parenting,
Right.
or at least continuing that protection for the children
Right. A little foresight for them.
beyond the age of 18.
Now, would that be an example? You mentioned that trust can actually be within a will. Would
Yes.
that be an example of one?
That is.
Okay,
And so in
okay.
that instance, because
Mhm.
the trust language is contained in the will,
Right.
we call it a testamentary trust,
Mhm.
because it's part of your last will and testament.
Very good, yeah.
As opposed to a freestanding trust,
Mm-hmm.
which is what you commonly hear called a living trust.
Okay.
Not
like
always-
a living will.
Well, yes, but a different concept.
Okay.
But a living trust is a label that's sometimes applied. It's a trust that is basically freestanding, not within the will,
Gotcha.
but a freestanding trust and active during your lifetime.
Okay.
A trust that is within your will, you're not putting assets into it, you're not doing anything with it unless or until you die.
Okay. Now, I talked about trust a little bit on this because this applies to baby boomers. I know when my folks had to go to the retirement facility and we had to move money around, we put a lot of it in trust. So tell us about how that affects, do you understand?
Yes, I do. Okay. Now we are talking more about living trusts.
Oh, okay.
So living trusts, now we're getting a little more complicated. We're not getting totally complex, but now
Right.
we're getting a little more complicated because now we're talking about a trust serving a dual purpose. We're talking about a trust operating during the parent's lifetime.
Right.
They're now towards the end of the lifetime spectrum.
Right.
Not the children at the beginning, but
Right,
they're at the end of the spectrum, but still alive. But we're also talking about a trust that's putting in those instructions. What happens to the property when mom and dad die?
Right.
So it is more complicated because it's including both sets of instructions.
So as a disbursement, you mean? So when your
Absolutely.
folks pass away, this is how everything is dispersed. And that's considered a trust?
It is.
Okay, I would have thought it was more of a will.
It can be a will, but
Okay.
most often,
Those assets are put in a trust.
most often they are put in a trust.
Okay, that makes sense. That
At
makes
that
sense.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, because then if a trust is utilized at that point in time and the assets are actually put into the trust, if mom and dad actually become incompetent,
Yes.
then we've actually got a trustee, a backup trustee, who is able to manage those assets for mom and dad while they're alive.
Is that typically the power of attorney of usually the family?
That's a great question,
Okay.
except not quite.
Okay.
It may be, a power of attorney is a different way to manage. If you didn't have assets in a trust, you've obviously paid attention when I've talked before. Because
Okay.
that's a different way to manage
Okay.
assets that are
I
not in a
tried.
trust. You have paid attention. It's a different way to manage the
Right.
assets if they're not in trust.
Okay.
But if the assets are all in trust, then the trustee is the power is the person that has the power to manage the assets in the trust.
Okay.
So it's just a different approach.
Okay. Another thing I know when we set up the trust, I have a brother and sister. So when the trust were set up for my folks, all three of us. So nobody can actually maneuver without all of us maneuvering. So do a lot of people do that? Tell me about that.
A lot of people do that. Now, I don't like that.
Okay. Okay, tell me why.
The reason I don't like it is because sometimes we get gridlock.
Okay. Yes,
it's,
I could see that
it's
happening.
good news and it's bad news. The good news is what you expressed, is we have those checks and balances in place.
Right.
One person isn't running off rogue, right?
Right.
And that was the intention. The bad news is, from time to time, we have gridlock.
Because the three can't decide, or however big.
Right, nothing happens until three people agree that something happens. So
Right.
that's the reason I don't like it
Okay.
from a practical standpoint. But that's a choice.
Okay.
That's an absolute choice.
You know what? We're going to take a quick break, and I've got some more questions for you.
Thank you.
So we'll be back in just a minute.
When Margaret and I decided to sell the old estate here, we had only one choice in signage. Logan Street signs and banners. Actually not located on Logan Street anymore, but rather located on the south side of Noblesville. Well, we sold the old beauty, and we were able to buy this wonderful estate. And we had so much money left over, I was able to buy this beautiful 1968 Eldorado Cadillac for Margaret. Only 472,000 miles. Margaret loves it because it's got those big seats and that heavy-duty suspension to support her svelte frame. Next time you're looking for signs or banners, call old Jim at Logan Street Signs and Banners, 773-7200. Conveniently not located on Logan Street anymore.
Everyone knows it's easy to find first-run movies in the big theaters. But where can you go to watch your favorite classic movies on the big screen for the perfect night out? Why rent a flick when you can rent the entire theater? Call today to reserve our 32-seat theater for your next event, or just stop by to see what's showing this weekend. The 14 by 7 foot screen and the high quality digital surround sound system offers all the amenities you would expect from the big theaters, with a laid back atmosphere and comfortable seating of your own home. Wofford Theater at 1744 South 10th Street in Noblesville gives you the classic movies you want with a big theater experience. Everyone knows it's
Welcome back. Mary Pat McKee with the Indy Boomer magazine show. I'm sitting here this morning with Ann Poindexter from Campbell, Kyle and Prophet. We have been discussing trust. I'm telling you, the first segment was the fastest segment I've ever had in my life here. Interesting information. We're going to continue. Tell us some of the misconceptions that people might have about trust.
Here are what I think are some of the most common misconceptions when people come into my office.
Okay.
I do get some people that come into my office and say, absolutely, I need you to do a trust for me. And I'll say, fine. But I'd like for you to tell me why you think I need to do a trust for me. And they'll tell me, you need to do a trust for me because that is the way to save taxes.
Oh,
And
so
I
everybody has.
say, what taxes are we going to save with this trust? Well, we're going to save inheritance and estate taxes. Well, the sad part about that is that Indiana repealed its inheritance tax.
Oh, that's
And
not
that
good.
the federal estate tax exemption is well over $5 million,
So you got to have that much to even get
which
it.
means for most of us, we don't really need to worry about the
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
estate tax.
I think that's off
And
of my list of
so
worries.
that, most people don't need to worry about utilizing, by the way, it takes a special complex trust planning to
Oh, I bet.
minimize taxes. But so the average individual that walks into my office doesn't need it to minimize taxes. But a lot of people come in with that misconception.
Sure, I believe
because
that.
of snippets that they read somewhere
Or hear from somebody.
or hear on the radio
Yeah.
or someplace else. And the other reason that people come in and say they need a trust is because they need to avoid probate. And so that one is one that requires some conversation.
Is that true?
No, to me it's a choice.
Okay.
I don't think that the average person needs to avoid probate. I think they need to have a conversation and they may choose to avoid probate. And that's okay if they choose to. But,
Okay. They need to understand probate.
they need to understand.
I don't understand probate.
And I've been doing this long enough, 26 years now, that I can tell you that probate is not what it used to be. When I was a very young lawyer, probate estates used to routinely take more than a year.
To
Part-
accomplish, you mean to get set up?
start
and-
to finish, yeah.
Okay.
And part of that was because the claims period for a creditor to come in and file their claim
Oh,
to
they had
get
to
paid.
wait. Okay.
So routinely, more than a year. And by the way, routinely, lawyers charged a percentage of the estate back in the good old days.
Yes, they don't anymore.
No.
Okay.
And then the claims period went down to 9 months.
Okay.
And, claims period 6 months. Claims period is now 3 months.
Really? So if the person who passed away owed any bills, the creditors would have 3 months in order to collect? Is that correct?
Once we open the estate and publish the notice in the newspaper, they have 3 months from the published
Wow.
date of notice.
Okay.
And so if we don't have litigation in the estate, if we don't have some business that is difficult for us to shut down or sell,
Right.
if we have, a house and some investments.
Yeah, you can't get it done in 3 months.
We open and close estates in 6 months or less these days.
Mm-hmm.
And we charge based on the time that we spend, our
Right.
hourly rate.
Mhm.
And so to do a trust versus some routine probate work,
Mm-hmm.
in many instances, there's not a huge disparity
Mm-hmm.
in between those costs.
Okay.
And so when people think that they need to avoid the probate cost,
Mm-hmm.
if they're fee-driven
Right.
and time-driven,
Okay.
that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
And I want them to think about that. And again, it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that people are often concerned about is trusts are private. And probate, anybody can go to the courthouse and look at a file and a will.
Okay.
And that's true.
Okay.
And that's true. I go to the courthouse all the time. And I can tell you that I rarely see anybody asking to look at a file. I suppose if
Why
you were,
would you want to look?
I
at a
suppose
file?
if you were the Rockefellers, that people
Oh,
would
okay.
routinely ask to look at your file.
Right.
But I doubt when I die that many people are going to ask to look at the Poindexter file. I don't know if you expect people
They
to
probably
look.
will now that you said that. but-
Maybe they will. But in all seriousness,
Mm-hmm.
if people are concerned about privacy,
Yeah.
trusts are more private, but that's not perfect.
So they're not completely private.
Trusts don't have to automatically be filed for probate,
Okay.
but a trust can be docketed
Mm-hmm.
if there is a concern
Right.
or if there's a controversy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not perfect.
Right.
It may end up in the courthouse.
I got to tell you, you know what I'm hearing is that if you think, I want to ask you another question, but the bottom line is that if you want information, you really need to talk to an expert. You need to come to somebody like yourself and find out what it really means, because it's complicated.
You need to talk to a lawyer. You
Yeah.
need to have a conversation. And that's why I say, when someone comes in and says, I need a trust, you need to do a trust for me.
Right.
I don't want to take that at face value. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody. And I'm
But
always,
that may not be what they need because
I'm
they
always-
don't know what they need.
I'm happy to do a trust for someone.
Sure.
But I want to explore why they want that trust
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that the reasons they want to trust,
Right.
that the trust is really
Is the right
accomplishing
vehicle,
their goals.
Right.
And is the most cost-effective
Right.
method of accomplishing their goals at the same time.
Well, and a good message maybe to get out to people is that if you think you need a trust, if the person you go see just says, okay, I'll do you a trust, that's not right. They need to, it's kind of reminds me of sales. You need to find out what it is that the customer needs, or client, as you probably call them in your industry, but, what is it they need instead of just giving it to them? Because I think there's a lot of folks maybe that can do trust that just do it and they don't find out what the objective is of the client.
Now, I don't want to create any impression that I have any problem with trust. Trusts are valuable,
Yes,
valuable
I
tools.
agree.
And
I
I
agree.
do a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they serve a very good purpose in many instances.
Sure.
But there are a number of times that people come to me, and at the end of a conversation, they
It's not the
decide
right product.
that's not what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Well, tell me this, well, we gotta hurry, but tell me, I'm sorry, time's flying again, what can I say? But tell me, who needs a trust? Who should come talk to you?
I think I can't answer that question. Who
Okay.
needs a trust?
Okay.
A lot of people can benefit from a trust. For example, the couple with young children,
Mm-hmm.
they need, at a minimum, they need trust language in their wills.
Right.
Individuals, depending on the size and the complexity of their assets,
Right.
may need a trust, a different type of trust.
Sure.
Individuals who would have a federally taxable estate
Meaning they have
may
some
need
money.
a trust with,
Okay.
Individuals who want to minimize their income taxes through some charitable planning.
Okay.
Can benefit from some
trust.
trusts.
Okay.
It just depends. Again, that was a very simple question.
But
that-
it's a very complicated answer.
Yeah, it sounded simple, but
Okay.
it's a very complicated answer. But a good question, because it requires a whole conversation.
Well, I think a couple things that I'm hearing. One and for baby boomers who are trying to take care of their elderly parents, maybe get these trusts set up. So as you talked about the younger families that need them for their children in case something would happen to them, do it early so the parents, baby boomer parents, can help make the decisions of how that trust is dispersed, correct?
Well, yes and no.
There's no easy question. Okay, all right. The bottom line is, go see Ann at Campbell Kyle and Prophet. And give us a phone, well, there's a phone number on the screen, 846-6514.
Yes,
That's the
ma'am.
number they need to call. I really, if you're a baby boomer and your parents have any kind of assets, I think it's well worth your time to talk to an attorney about what and if a trust is the right product for them.
Right, to meet your individual needs.
Right, okay, time has flown. We will be back again this year a couple different times. So listen to us on the radio Monday through Friday at 6:30, or you can get us on demand at HamiltonCountyTelevision.com. Ann, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.